Well, you know I stay
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, till I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord,
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, till I die. Lord, you know I'm on
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, moan
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, moan
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness, till I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh yes,
in the wilderness,
oh
in the
Lord,
wilderness,
wilderness, oh yes, in the wilderness, oh in the wilderness, till I die.
Well, then I stay
In the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
till I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord,
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the
till I
wilderness,
die.
till I
Well,
die.
then I'm born
In the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
born
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
born
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
till I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord,
in the wilderness,
born
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
born
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
born
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the
till I
wilderness,
die.
till I
Well,
die.
yes, I preached
In the wilderness,
in the
in
wilderness,
the wilderness,
preached
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
preached
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
till I die.
in the
Oh
wilderness,
yeah,
in the
then I
wilderness,
preached
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
preached
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
preached
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness, till I
wilderness,
die.
till I
Well, then I
die.
sing
In the wilderness,
in the
in the wilderness,
sing
Lord, in the wilderness,
in the
in
wilderness,
the wilderness,
sing
in the wilderness,
in the wilderness,
in the
till I
wilderness,
die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord, then I
Lord,
sing
in the wilderness,
in the
in
wilderness,
the wilderness,
sing
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
sing
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness, till I
wilderness,
die.
till I
Yeah, I'm
die.
gonna stay
In the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
stay
Lord, in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness, till
wilderness,
I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord,
in the
then
wilderness,
I
Lord,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
stay
in the
in
wilderness,
the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
stay
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness, till I
wilderness,
die.
till I
Well, I'm
die.
gonna pray
In the wilderness,
in the
in the wilderness,
pray
Lord, in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness,
wilderness,
pray
in the wilderness,
in the
in the
wilderness, till
wilderness,
I die.
in the wilderness,
Oh Lord,
in the
then